I have spent 27 years managing estates for Europe's most private families. I learned early that discretion is worth more than gold, and silence protects both employer and employee. But this story, what I witnessed in Monaco during the spring of 2003, has haunted me for over 2 decades. The Delacroix family hired me to oversee the final inspection of Villa Lumière before its sale. A straightforward assignment, or so I believed. The property had been in their family since 1928, perched on the cliffs overlooking the Mediterranean. According to every document in my possession, architectural plans, insurance records, municipal filings, the villa contained exactly 6 rooms, a grand salon, dining room, kitchen, master bedroom, guest bedroom, and library. I had studied these papers meticulously during the flight from London. Madame Delacroix met me at Nice airport herself, unusual for a woman of her standing. She was elegant, perhaps 70, with the kind of composed manner that comes from generations of inherited wealth. During our drive along the coastal road, she spoke little, only mentioning that the family wished to conclude the sale quickly. "Some places," she said, gazing at the sparkling water, "carry too much memory." Her voice held a weight I didn't understand then. When we arrived at Villa Lumière that Tuesday afternoon in March, the Mediterranean sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon. The villa stood magnificent against the cliff, its white walls glowing like marble in the golden light. The villa's entrance opened into the grand salon, exactly as the architectural plans indicated. French doors led to a terrace overlooking the sea, and I noted the original 1920s fixtures remained intact. Madame Delacroix watched me examine each room methodically, my clipboard in hand, checking measurements against the official documentation. The dining room featured hand-painted wallpaper depicting Mediterranean landscapes. The kitchen, though period-appropriate, had been modernized in the 1980s. The master bedroom commanded stunning views of Monaco's harbor below, while the guest bedroom faced the gardens. The library, lined with first edition volumes in French and English, completed my tour of the documented spaces. "Everything appears to match the records perfectly," I told Madame Delacroix as we stood in the salon. She nodded, but her eyes held an expression I couldn't decipher, relief mixed with something else. Anticipation, perhaps? Or dread? "Monsieur Blake," she said, using my surname with old-world formality, "I must return to Monaco for an appointment. Please complete your inspection at your own pace. The caretaker will return at 6 o'clock to lock the villa." She handed me a set of keys, her fingers cold despite the warm afternoon. "I trust you will find everything as it should be." After her departure, I began my detailed measurements. The villa felt larger inside than the exterior suggested, but Mediterranean architecture often created such illusions. I worked systematically, room by room, noting dimensions and conditions for my final report. By 4:30 that afternoon, I had completed my assessment of all documented rooms. The villa's silence was profound, broken only by the distant sound of waves against the cliffs below. I sat in the salon reviewing my notes when something struck me as odd. Walking from the library to the master bedroom, I had counted my steps out of professional habit, a practice developed over years of estate work. 37 steps along the corridor, yet according to my measurements and the architectural plans, that distance should have been 28 steps at most. I returned to the corridor, measuring tape in hand. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, given the room dimensions I had recorded. This discrepancy troubled me. In my experience, Mediterranean villas from this period followed strict proportional guidelines. Space was never wasted, never unaccounted for. I walked the corridor again, counting carefully. 37 steps from the library door to the master bedroom. But the mathematics of my room measurement suggested a gap, approximately 9 feet of space, that existed physically but appeared nowhere in the villa's official documentation. Standing in the center of the corridor, I examined the walls more closely. The left wall showed no irregularities, its hand-painted panels consistent throughout. But the right wall, the one facing the sea, seemed different somehow. The paintwork matched perfectly, yet something about the proportions felt wrong. I pressed my palm against the wall, feeling for any give or hollow spaces. The plaster felt solid, but my fingertips detected the faintest outline, a vertical line running from floor to ceiling. The outline was barely perceptible, a hairline crack in the painted surface that could easily be mistaken for normal settling. But I had examined enough estate properties to recognize something more deliberate. This was not structural damage. This was craftsmanship designed to conceal. I retrieved a small penlight from my briefcase and examined the wall more carefully. The vertical line extended exactly 6 feet from floor to ceiling, with a corresponding horizontal line at standard door height. Someone had taken extraordinary care to disguise what was clearly a door frame within the existing wall pattern. My rational mind suggested multiple explanations: a sealed doorway from an earlier renovation, access to utility spaces, or simply an architectural quirk. But the villa's documentation made no mention of any sealed spaces. Moreover, the missing 9 feet of corridor length corresponded exactly to the width this hidden space would occupy. I searched the wall for any mechanism, a hidden latch, pressure point, or concealed handle. The painted panels showed no obvious means of entry. Yet the door's outline became more apparent the longer I studied it. How many people had walked this corridor without noticing what I had discovered? The afternoon light streaming through the salon's French doors began to fade, casting longer shadows in the hallway. As the angle of sunlight shifted, I noticed something else: a small, almost invisible keyhole positioned at standard lock height within the disguised doorframe. The keyhole was painted to match the surrounding wall, but its shape remained discernible to careful observation. I examined the keys Madame Delacroix had given me. The ring held 5 keys of varying sizes and designs, clearly different periods of the villa's history. 4 I had already used for the documented rooms and exterior doors. The 5th key was smaller, older, its brass darkened with age and handling. My hand trembled slightly as I approached the hidden keyhole. Professional protocol dictated I should document this discovery and contact the family immediately. Yet something compelled me forward. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps the simple need to understand what I had found. The old brass key fit perfectly. The mechanism turned with surprising ease, well maintained despite its concealment. I heard a soft click, and the hidden door swung inward on silent hinges. Cool air flowed from the opening, carrying scents of old wood and something else, something I couldn't immediately identify. Beyond the threshold lay a 7th room, approximately 9 feet by 12 feet, exactly the dimensions my measurements had suggested. Natural light filtered through a single window facing the Mediterranean, though this window was not visible from the exterior, another architectural impossibility I couldn't explain. The room was furnished simply: a writing desk positioned before the window, a leather chair and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves along 3 walls. But it was the desk's contents that made my breath catch. Stacks of letters, tied with blue ribbon, covered its surface. The paper appeared aged, yellowed at the edges, yet the ink looked fresh. The topmost letter bore an inscription in elegant handwriting: "Pour mon fils bien-aimé Henri, Henri Delacroix." I recognized the name from the family documents. Madame Delacroix's son, who had died in 1998, 5 years earlier. According to the obituary in my files, Henri had been 34B, killed in a sailing accident off the Monaco coast. I approached the desk carefully, my footsteps muffled by a Persian rug that showed no signs of age or wear. The letters appeared to be arranged chronologically, the most recent dated just 3 weeks ago, March 5th, 2003. This was impossible. Henri Delacroix had been dead for 5 years. The letter's content, written in the same elegant hand, began: "My darling Henri, today marks 5 years since you left us. Your room remains as you left it, though I know you visit when the house grows too quiet." I read further, my professional composure cracking with each line. The letters spoke of daily life, family concerns, business matters, all addressed to a dead son as if he were simply away traveling. Madame Delacroix had been writing to Henri continuously since his death, leaving these letters in a room that officially did not exist. But the truly disturbing detail was not the letters themselves. It was that several appeared to have been moved. Some ribbon ties were loose, pages slightly displaced, as if someone had been reading them. Recent fingerprints marked the desk's leather surface. In the window's fading light, I noticed something else: a sailing trophy dated 1999 at Bayeux, the year after Henri's death. The trophy was inscribed, "Henri Delacroix, Mediterranean Regatta Champion 1999. 1 year after his supposed death. My hands shook as I examined the silver cup, its surface polished to a mirror shine, free of dust despite the room's apparent age. I photographed everything with my digital camera, the letters, guards, the trophy, the room's impossible architecture. But as I reviewed the images on the camera's small screen, they appeared strangely distorted. The letters looked blank, the trophy's inscription illegible, the room itself seeming smaller and darker than my eyes perceived. A sound from the corridor made me freeze. Footsteps, measured and deliberate, approaching the hidden door. But the caretaker was not due until 6 o'clock, and my watch showed only 5:15. I listened intently, my breath held. The footsteps stopped directly outside the room. I waited, counting seconds that stretched like hours. Then softly came the sound of breathing, not labored or hurried, but the steady rhythm of someone listening as intently as I was. The presence felt familiar somehow, though I had never experienced anything like it. After what seemed an eternity, the footsteps retreated down the corridor, fading into the villa's profound silence. I remained motionless for several more minutes, before gathering the courage to approach the doorway. The corridor appeared exactly as I had left it, empty and bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. Yet something had changed. The air held a different quality, charged and expectant. I returned to the desk, hoping to understand more about these impossible letters. Opening the drawers carefully, I found additional correspondence, not letters to Henri, but letters from Henri to his mother, dated after his death. The first, twice dated June 3rd, 1999, is read, "Maman, I know you feel me here." The sailing was peaceful that day, more peaceful than you imagine. I remained close to what I love most. The handwriting was distinctly different from Madame Delacroix's elegant script, more masculine, urgent. Letter after letter followed the same pattern. Henri writing about his continued presence, his awareness of his mother's grief, his observations of family life continuing without him. The most recent letter, dated February 20th, 2003, contained a disturbing line. "Someone new comes to the house today. He will find our room. Please don't be afraid when he does." 3 weeks ago, the exact date Madame Delacroix had contacted my firm to arrange this inspection. I sat in the leather chair, trying to process what I was discovering. Either I was witnessing the elaborate fantasy of a grief-stricken mother, or something far more impossible was occurring in Villa Lumière. The letters felt real beneath my fingers, the paper genuine, the ink fresh enough to smudge. Outside the hidden window, the Mediterranean had turned deep blue as evening approached. The view should have been identical to that from the master bedroom, yet somehow it appeared different, more vivid, as if seen through clearer glass. As darkness began to settle over Monaco, I noticed something extraordinary. Lights were appearing across the harbor, but their reflections on the water showed differently through this hidden window. Where the master bedroom's view revealed the familiar pattern of Monaco's evening illumination, this window showed additional lights, points of brightness that corresponded to no buildings I could identify. I compared the views by moving quickly between rooms. The discrepancy was unmistakable. Through the 7th room's window, the Mediterranean coast appeared populated by structures that cast no shadows, harbored no physical presence, yet glowed with warm, welcoming light. Returning to the hidden room, I found a new letter on the desk. I was certain it had not been there moments before. The paper was warm to the touch, the ink still wet. In Henri's handwriting it read, "Monsieur Blake, you have kind eyes. Mother needs to know that letting go does not mean forgetting. Some doors were meant to open." My professional skepticism warred with the undeniable evidence before me. I had documented enough estates to distinguish between psychological phenomena and physical impossibilities. This transcended both categories. The sound of a car engine drifted up from the villa's entrance. 6 o'clock exactly. The caretaker had arrived. I gathered my camera and notes, but hesitated at the threshold of the 7th room. Some instinct told me this might be my only opportunity to understand what I had discovered. In the distance, I heard the front door open and close. "Monsieur Blake," the caretaker's voice echoed through the villa. "The inspection is complete." "Yes?" I called back that I needed a few more minutes, my voice steadier than I felt. The caretaker, a weathered man in his 60s whom Madame Delacroix had introduced as Georges, responded that he would wait in the salon. Alone again with the impossible room, I made a decision that would change everything. I wrote a brief note on villa stationery from my briefcase. I have found Henri's room. He wants you to know that he is at peace and that your love reaches him. Some doors were meant to remain open. J. Blake. I placed the note on the desk beside Henri's letters and stepped back into the corridor. The hidden door closed silently behind me, its outline disappearing so completely that I questioned whether I could find it again without the key. Georges was waiting in the salon, smoking a cigarette and gazing out at the darkening Mediterranean. "You have finished your work, monsieur?" "Yes," I replied, though the word felt inadequate. "The villa is exactly as documented." He nodded, studying my face with shrewd eyes. "Madame Delacroix, she will be pleased. This house, it has been difficult for her since—" He did not finish the sentence. "Since Henri died." "Since Henri came home," Georges corrected quietly. "Some sons, they never truly leave their mothers." Georges' words confirmed what I had suspected but feared to acknowledge. He had known about the seventh room, perhaps had always known. As we locked the villa and walked to our respective cars, he spoke softly in the darkness. 5 years ago, after the accident, Madame Delacroix refused to accept Henri's death. She would come here every day, speaking to empty rooms, leaving food for someone who would never eat again. We thought it was grief, you understand. The kind that breaks minds. He paused, lighting another cigarette with hands that trembled slightly. But then things began. Responding. Letters appeared. Objects moved. The villa began to feel occupied again, but differently. Not haunted, Monsieur Blake. Inhabited. I listened without interrupting, understanding that Georges had been waiting years to share this burden with someone who might believe. "The room you found today, it was Henri's sanctuary as a child. He would hide there during his parents' arguments, during the difficult years before his father's death. Madame Delacroix had it sealed after a family tragedy, but Henri—" Georges looked toward the dark villa windows. "Henri remembered every corner of his home. You've seen him. Not seen, no, but felt known. The villa breathes differently when he is present. And he is always present when his mother grieves too deeply." Georges dropped his cigarette and ground it under his heel. "Your inspection will say 6 rooms, yes. Some truths are too large for official documents." I returned to London the following morning, my mind reeling from what I had experienced. My official report documented exactly 6 rooms, as Georges had predicted. But I also wrote a detailed personal account of the 7th room, which I sealed and filed in my private papers. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Madame Delacroix. The villa's sale had been completed to a family who intended to preserve its original character. She thanked me for my thorough inspection and mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that she had found a note on Henri's desk, a note that had brought her great comfort. "Some doors," she wrote, "were indeed meant to remain open." I never returned to Monaco, though the memory of Villa Lumière has never left me. I learned later that Madame Delacroix had died peacefully in 2007, found in her Monaco apartment with a letter from Henri dated that very morning. The villa changed hands twice more before being converted into a private museum dedicated to Mediterranean maritime history. Visitors report that the building feels larger inside than its exterior suggests, and that one room, a small study overlooking the sea, seems to maintain a presence that brings comfort to those who have lost loved ones. I have never spoken publicly about what I witnessed that March afternoon. Some estates house more than furniture and memories. Some rooms exist in the spaces between what is documented and what is true.